Hey y'all, welcome to the channel. I'm Task Force Bourbon, and today we're going to be celebrating the Boulevardier. This is a cocktail you might find yourself enjoying during the fall or winter months, or quite simply just as a way to step up the class to your holiday or New Year's Eve gatherings. This is a cocktail obviously rooted in bourbon, as with all things Task Force Bourbon. I am not a mixologist of any sort, just a bourbon enthusiast. And so we'd like to celebrate something to throw back all the way almost 100 years ago to 1920s Paris. Before we get into the history, I'd like to real quickly just go over the ingredients so that way you know if you need to go out or you've already got it in the house. We're going to be using 2 ounces of bourbon, an ounce of Campari, and an ounce of sweet or Italian Vermouth, and then a little bit of orange peel for garnish. We'll go into exactly how to make it after I go over the background. So the Boulevardier cocktail is credited to an American named Erskine Gwynne. Gwynne is the wealthy nephew of the railroad tycoon Alfred Vanderbilt. That Vanderbilt. He's also brother to the notorious socialite Kiki Preston, but more notably, he founded a monthly literary magazine in Paris called, surprise, surprise, the Boulevardier. It ran from 1927 to 1932, and he even published Hemingway a few times. The word loosely translates to a man who frequents the boulevards, thus a man about town, or bon vivant, and is pronounced Boulevardier. The recipe first appears in a volume called Barflies and Cocktails in 1927, which is the memoirs and recipes of Harry MacElhone of Harry's New York bar in Paris, where Gwynne frequented and drank this cocktail. The recipe was not among the book's A to Z recipes, but an entry in the back called Cocktails Around Town, contributed by Arthur Moss, who wrote, and I'll quote you here, "Now is the time for all good barflies to come to the aid of the party, since Erskine Gwynne crashed in with his Boulevardier cocktail, 1/3 Campari, 1/3 Italian Vermouth, 1/3 bourbon whiskey." All right, don't get hung up because I'm going to explain that just here in a sec. Although the original recipe calls for equal parts, most bartenders nowadays choose to tweak in favor of the whiskey for better balance. Since bourbon is an American product, and this cocktail was created during Prohibition, when production was seemingly at its all-time low, the inclusion suggests the cocktail is for favored guests and used sparingly, hence the original ratio. The Boulevardier is most similar to the Negroni, though Negroni's first print wasn't seen until 1947 and is differentiated by its use of bourbon instead of gin. Now, real quick, as a side note to that, I do have to defend the Negroni because the Negroni may predate it by about 10 years or so. However, since there's no internet back in the 1920s, it's all but assured this cocktail was invented by itself. And again, the Negroni wasn't in print until after the Negroni was in print. So if you look at a defend the Boulevardier, there you go. However, in another way, it's also viewed as a Manhattan with Campari in lieu of the bitters. Campari is an Italian aperitif created in 1860, made of a proprietary blend of herbs and spices, while sweet vermouth is often credited to an Italian herbalist in 1786. It's a fortified wine aromatized with herbs, spices, and roots, then sweetened with sugar. This cocktail is warm and rich, with subtle sweetness, citrus bitterness, and aromatics. So before we get into the fun part of drinking it, we first got to make it. So what I have here is just your standard jiggers, and I'm going to first start by adding in what I have here is the Campari. So we're going to add in 1 ounce. Be careful with the Campari, it does stain. One ounce of sweet vermouth. And 2 ounces of bourbon. Now, you don't want to spend something too crazy here, right? But you do want some bourbon that's going to stand out. So I've chosen today to use Old Grandad 114, a high rye bourbon, obviously at the 114 proof level. 1 ounce. And again, to bring that balance out a little bit in favor of the bourbon, 2 ounce. Now we must add in the ice. touch more. All right. Give it a good stir here for a little bit. Now, it is important that you stir and don't shake. If you shake this cocktail, what will happen is you'll just make it really cloudy. Now, does it affect the drinking of it? Not necessarily, but it doesn't look as nice. Then we're going to strain it into a rocks glass. Like thus. And just real quickly, give it a slice of orange peel. You can do this as fancy as you want, but again, I'm no bartender, and I just need it just enough for the flavor. Of course, you want to try, if you can, get a little bit of zest in there. Splash it in. And cheers.